I'm so excited to welcome you back for another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I teed this up a little bit last week's episode. We are going to hear from Mike Capuzzi of Bite-Sized Books. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Annika, thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. I was really excited when we started talking about you coming on as a guest, because being an author is something I think a lot of people see a lot of value in to add to their business, right? To be able to say you're a published author. But there is a nuance and a difference in how to do that. And you have some very specific ways that you help get results. You've written best-selling books yourself. So first, before we get into that, I'd love for you to start on how did you decide to do this as your livelihood?
So it goes back to, I think I was like 5 years old.
Oh, I love that.
So we have a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
I joke because my grandmother, my mom's mom, was a voracious reader, and she instilled that love of books into me at a very young age. I mean, I was reading like novels at in elementary school, and I'd go visit her. I used to have to travel a couple hours to go visit her, and she had this big library, and I just loved it. I just loved books. So I've always had a love of books, a love of reading. I've always encouraged my daughters when they were younger to read. So I just love books. And like a lot of people, Annika, I had the dream at some point to write a book, but like a lot of people at the time, I didn't know how. I wasn't sure if I was smart enough, was I witty enough, whatever it was, right? All this head trash. That was on me. Published the first one very quickly. A little difference there. I didn't write it. It was a compilation book, but then realized, hey, this is not that big of a deal. And that was in 2007. And since then, I think I'm up to 14 or 15 books.
Wow.
And I just love helping people. All my family, except myself, I was an engineering major for college. The rest of my family are all teachers. So I had this teaching DNA in me, wanting to help people. And I think the written word and in book format is still a very powerful way to connect with people.
Absolutely. I am a voracious reader. I used to write a lot of poetry when I was younger, and I always thought I'd be an author someday. And I think, like many people like you, have ideas, but it's all about how do you find the time and the energy, or do you find a ghostwriter and all of that. And so you're a publisher, you're an author, you're a book publishing coach, and you have kind of created this thing called Shooks, right?
Yeah.
Short, helpful books. So are all of your books Shooks? And what is define Shook, and how did you come up with that?
Yeah, well, being a marketing person, you'll appreciate this, right? So listen, as you know, there's a ton of people that do what you do. There's a ton of people that do what I do. And it's always key. It's something so first of all, I have a lengthy marketing background. I was doing engineering, but for the most part of my career, 25 plus years now, marketing, okay? Corporate marketing, then more direct response for small and medium-sized businesses. But anyway, you have to distinguish yourself, right? Brand, whatever, however you want to call it. So I just didn't want to be a book publisher. And then I started realizing the power of shorter books that can be read in about an hour. So we're not talking pamphlets. We're not talking War and Peace. Somewhere, in between, if you will. And, it came up with my own brand. I thought, don't publish a book, publish a Shook. So yes, Shook stand for short, helpful books. They are nonfiction, typically business-oriented books that are meant to help readers with a very specific topic.
Nice. Yeah. I think I've read some books that I guess would probably be considered Shooks that have been really great business books. And I noticed that I do get stuck when I'm like, oh, this looks like a book that I really need to read to move my business forward. But then it's long. And then I just can't get, with everything else, with the mom and animals and full-time job and everything else that we do, it can be hard to find that time. So yeah.
It's amazing because again, I'm a voracious reader, right? I'm a pretty fast reader, and I'm getting older now. And I started, I don't know how often you start books, and then, they're 300 pages, and then you get bogged down, and there's a lot of bloat in books. There's a lot of books that are bloated unnecessarily, in my opinion. and they repeat themselves. You're like, oh my gosh, just get to the point.
Yep.
So I think the promise of, and you know, if you don't mind, I'll just show one of my shooks. Like it's a real book. Like it's a book, it's on a bookshelf, but that's a 1 hour read. Just like this interview is a 30, 60-minute interview. It's short and concise. So is a shook. It's not meant to be the entire topic on whatever the book is about, but it's meant to give readers a taste. And then, which is key, Annika, is it's meant to lead interested readers to the next step.
Yeah.
So not only is it a short book, about 100 pages, about 12 to 15,000 words, which is a lot less than your traditional 75 to 100,000 word business book, but it also follows a very specific recipe. There's certain things we do in shooks that are really meant to, they're sales tools, right? So I approach it like a sales tool. There's triggers in there to allow readers who are interested to get more information, yada, yada, yada. So it's more than just the fact that it's short. It's a formula, if you will, a recipe. I'm of Italian descent, so I had to go to recipe. My other grandmother was Italian, so I had that homage to her. And we've developed a recipe for these little short books.
So you just showed me your 100-page book, which is called the 100-page book. So,
and it's 100 pages.
Yeah. So what is in that book?
So that book has our recipe. As a matter of fact, I should always have it here. I actually have my grandmother used to have these, my grandmother, the Italian grandmother, you would have these old little 3x5 cards of her recipes. And we made one up. It's in there. It's in the, we created our own little recipe card. But anyway, this is a recipe for a roughly 100-page book, which is about an hour read. It tells you literally from the first page to the last page, what my recommendation, what my recipe is, what should go here, what should go here, what should go here. And I give you examples. So what's cool about it, Annika, is I've had, and we've sold thousands. It wasn't my intention because most of my books I give away, but we're up on Amazon and we've sold thousands of copies of this book. It came out almost 2 years ago and kind of took off. And, if you read the reviews, and there's a couple hundred reviews, which is kind of cool, people will say like, this is exactly what I was looking for, right? So it's really filled in a space in the book publishing space for folks that know they have a message, know they have to share something, but like yourself, they're just busy. How do I write a traditional book? You can get these done in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, nice. And so I've noticed that there are a lot of people who write short books that aren't writing them as marketing messages. They're writing them as their own story. And that I think is where I find, that I find a little odd sometimes, quite frankly, because I have had clients come to me, oh, I'm an author, I wrote a book. And then I look at the book and I'm like, well, what's going to be the best way to promote this? Because it's short content and it's not leading to selling something like you would with a marketing or a business book. So do you get, because I imagine, okay, so people can use your formula, but I imagine a lot of people also come to you and say, this is what I want to do. Help me, teach me the ways, go through perhaps a program or have you as their, their advisor, or I don't know if you use ghostwriters as well. How do you ever say no to somebody who comes to you, and how do you differentiate like what will be a successful shook and what won't?
Yeah, great question. Well, first of all, I use a shook. I use multiple shooks. You can see a couple back here. To make it very clear, first of all, if you're interested in working with me, by the time they get to me, and we do calls and Zoom calls and like that, that's our call to action, primary call to action. They're pretty clear on the kind of books we're publishing for our clients. So if they're looking to write their life's memoir, we're not the right publisher for them. But if they're a doctor, a dentist, a CEO, and they want to get the message out about something and connect it to their business, then yes, we can be the right choice. So absolutely, we definitely distinguish. As a matter of fact, just because I'll show you one of the I can get to open the book. One of the first, actually it's the first one. I'll see if I can show it there.
Who should read this book?
Right? And that is page 1. Like I write it up front, who should read this? And then I say, next page is who shouldn't. I'm very specific. Like, why waste your time? If you're looking for a fiction, want to write a fiction book, I'm not for you. So yeah, we're very specific.
Okay. So what continues to inspire and motivate you to stay in this business?
That's a good question too, because, as a business, the days, and I've been doing it, so I'm sort of more now towards the tail end of my career, hopefully not my life.
Okay.
And, I'm definitely slowing some things down. My kids are going to be out of college soon. So it's like, hey, now I'm going to enter that next phase. But I still get very jazzed up. So I host a podcast also. And like this week, I hosted a woman from Thailand,
Oh,
a gentleman from Tasmania,
oh
and
my
then I
gosh.
was on a gentleman's podcast who was from the UK. So like this big international push this week. And I love talking to people, whether they're our own clients or just people that just are putting out great content. And I call it's a helping before selling mentality. That's what I write about it, a helping before selling. And that's what books do. They allow you to offer helpful information before you try to sell somebody. And I get very jazzed when I hear other like-minded business owners that just are out there looking to give great content, and really make a difference in their own little space. So there's a matter of fact, there's an episode of my podcast that just went live this week. The gentleman, I don't know him, but it was a very interesting conversation. And he wrote a book on about how to change, if you have change. Unbeknownst to him, one of his target audience that he didn't realize when he wrote the book, but it happened afterwards, was that prisons were starting to use his book as part of like a curriculum to help prisoners as they prepare to get out of prison. And
Wow.
he never thought about that, right? He talks about it on his podcast. I was like, wow, like he didn't know his book was going to have that impact. And had he never written that book, then those men and women would have never had the impact that they needed at that point in their life. So I get jazzed up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so inspirational.
It is. It's very cool.
That's so unique because I think people usually set out with like, okay, what's my ideal
Right. Yep.
customer? Who am I writing for? So
Yep.
to make an even bigger impact, that's really amazing.
It is. And it's
Wow.
one of those things like he didn't know going into it based on
Yeah.
the conversation we had with him, but he said it's used in prisons all over the country now. And Annika, what I'll say, and this is something I always try to encourage people with, a lot of people get stuck when it comes to, I want to write a book, but I don't know how. I'm not smart enough. I'm not a good enough writer, which I kind of poo-poo, right?
Mhm.
No, it's a conversation in written format. But if it never gets done, if it's always just in your head or on your computer and never gets
Yeah.
published, then it's never going to help the people it should help.
Mhm.
And I always try to encourage people, put the spotlight off of you and your schedule and all that stuff, and think about the people that your book can help.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I like that approach.
Yeah. Well, most of us, it's human nature, right? We're busy, kids, whatever it is. And the gentleman I interviewed from Tasmania this week, it took him 7 years. And he was kind of laughing about it. But I said, Mike, it took me 7 years to write this one book. It wasn't a shook. And he said it was just this, and it was self-published. So it wasn't, it was something that just kept laboring on. And it doesn't have to be that way. Now he's happy he did it and it's now working for him, but it doesn't have to be that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So what is next in the industry and with your company?
Well, that's another good question. Well, it's funny because I'm an old school kind of guy, right? Like I was around when I was in college, and I had a girlfriend in college who lived a couple thousand miles away because I went away to college. I would handwrite letters to her once a week. It was like that kind of, like, that's how I grew up, right? Once a week phone calls, because phone calls back those days were too expensive for a college kid. So I appreciate the traditional book. Our primary mechanism are printed books, paperback typically. We do digital books, we do Kindle books, we do audiobooks. So I'm sort of old school. I don't necessarily believe that the printed book is going away anytime soon. They've been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They're not going to go away in the 21st century. So, I think it's a matter of more and more people. I think where it's going, where it's been going and where it's going to continue to go is technology is making it very simple for anyone to write a book and publish it themselves. Whether they work with someone like us, they do it on their own, doesn't matter. I mean, my first book in 2007, we had to print 3,000 copies to get the price point low enough.
Wow.
Those days are gone. So I think that technology is making it easier. As far as what we're doing, I think one of the things, I was just talking to a good friend of mine before this interview. I think one of the things that we have to get better at for our clients and helping our clients is using the book effectively. Another thing I preach a lot, Annika, is writing the book is actually the easy part. Using it, promoting it, getting it out there is the hard part. It really is. And it's the part that, it doesn't end, right? A book should not be in a box in a closet. It's got to be out there. So helping clients figure out effective ways. I wrote a shook on it called The Magic of Free Books. It offers 51 strategies. But again, I think we're going to have to, me and my company are going to have to move more into doing it for them in whatever capacity that looks like. Because like most business owners, they're just too busy to do a lot of it on their own.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because that's often something, people feel like I have an amazing product or I have an amazing service. I'm going to build a great website and people are just going to show up. And that's not the way things work. You have to really use, and some people think PR means sales. It's like, well, no, PR is exposure, but you have to have the integrated marketing strategy with PR to get the sales.
Absolutely.
And some people, they'll say, oh, you're going to do the PR, this book is going to be a bestseller. And I'm like, well, no, it's not if you don't implement all these other things too. You have to be the voice, right? You're the writer. It's your authentic voice. It's your soul. It's your message. And so we can get you interviews to talk about it, but how else are you showing up to your audience or to the ideal audience that you want? And that's something that people forget a lot when they're starting a business or they're writing a book or they're starting anything. They just think, okay, I'm going to put this out into the world and everybody's going to love it.
Yeah, it's in this day and age, it's the least factual or least realistic way, whether it's a book, whether it's a new product. By the way, PR and books, launching a book, we've had very good success. Myself, clients, PR is something I love. PR is sort of this art that a lot of people don't even leverage these days. I mean, again, smaller, maybe more small to medium-sized business owners, even entrepreneurs like solopreneurs. But PR can be very effective, very effective. Can I tell a real quick story?
Yeah, please.
Only because it's about my daughter, my older daughter. So my oldest daughter, who's now she's a junior in college. In her summer going into her senior year of high school, we were outside talking. It was July 4th weekend. I remember very distinctly. And she's like, Dad, what am I going to do this summer? I mean, she had a job at a veterinarian's office, working as a vet, like cleaning up and stuff. And she was getting ready to start applying to colleges. I said, well, why don't you publish a book? We had just rescued our first dog. So why don't we publish a book about dog rescues? So just like my first book was a compilation book, which means you go out and find 20, 30 people who want to contribute a chapter. We did that for her. So July 4th was the idea. By Labor Day, which was 3 months later, she had Dog Joy, a book called Dog Joy, which had 26 authors in it, contributing authors. She raised almost $6,000, which was donated to the 26 rescues in the book. But here's the cool part, Annika, why I wanted to share this. We did some very simple PR. 2 press releases. It timed it very perfectly. There was a National Dog Adoption Month or Dog Adoption Day, or I think it was in October. Anyway, long story short, she was on the front page of several local newspapers. So we saw local newspapers. She was featured in I live in the Philadelphia area. She was featured in the Philadelphia area magazine as one of these like 30 under 30 to watch out for.
Amazing.
She got amazing. Every college she applied to, except for one, which is the one she went to, she got scholarship. Like we weren't even applying for scholarships, but she used her book as a way to distinguish herself. She got handwritten letters from deans saying this is amazing. So we did like not the bare minimum, but maybe like halfway. She could have done a lot more. We could have done a lot more with it, but again, we weren't really expecting that to happen.
Yeah. But
that's the power of a book, and it's the power of PR. So I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, well, thank you.
Do you do PR for authors?
Yeah, we have done PR for authors before.
It's good to know.
Yeah. And some we've, and we've had different degrees of success. I think some things that you just said are important. It's about the
Mhm.
timing.
Yeah,
Like
that is the key in my
what can
opinion.
you tie it into?
Yes, absolutely.
So whatever the content is, how do you tie it into what's relevant, what journalists are looking for, whether to put on a list or, it's a month long, whatever
Yep.
AAPI or Black History Month or animal adoption or whatever it is, how do you tie it in? But then also, I think another strategy is to find bylined article opportunities. So take a chapter of your book, turn it into an article that can get published, and then that leads people back to your book.
Yeah, very
So
smart.
yeah, there's a lot of different strategies out
There
there.
is, and that's
It's
why
fun
you
to
got to
think
listen.
through.
I'm not a fan of doing a PR yourself. Like we work with a
Yeah.
company, which when
Yeah.
we're done, I want to talk to you about because the gentleman who owns it, he's also a poetry guy,
Oh, cool.
and he's always talked about I want to do a poetry book. He did a shook, but he didn't do a poetry book. But anyway, but yes, you got to, in my opinion, you've got to work with a PR professional.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, how do people find you if they want to learn more about how to write a shook, how to work with you as a publisher?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, all my books, my shooks are up on Amazon. You can find them there. As far as I've got a couple websites, my primary website that's been around forever is mikecapuzzi.com. And you'll see a couple different things that I've done over the years there. A lot of content up there. Our publishing company is bite-sized with a D, bitesizedbooks.com. And then we're actually just about ready to rebrand and not relaunch because it's been out there for 2.5 years, our own podcast, which is now going to be called the Author Factor Podcast, where I interview nonfiction business book authors. So we're up to over 100 episodes now, and
Nice.
people can check that out.
Very
And I have a
cool.
gift for your listeners, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So you mentioned the 100-page book.
Mhm.
I'm going to allow your listeners they can read it online for free. We have a digital version up. It's up online. You can read it for free. There's also a second shook I give you, which is a quick start guide. So it even distills it down even more, like bang, 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 here's what to do.
Wow.
So if they go to mikecapuzzi.com /gifts, so plural GIFTS, they can grab those 2 shooks.
Nice. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. Thank you. I'm going to download that. I can tell you that I'm probably also going to want to get the hard copy because I do like, I'm a visual learner. So I have to write things. I need to
I'm
read
the same
things.
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's something long, I'll listen to it in the car, in bite-sized chunks, and that works okay sometimes depending on what it is. But yeah. So that's fantastic. And then I teed you up a little bit. So hopefully you've had time to think about this, but I'd love to know a mantra that you live by or a favorite quote.
Yep. And there's a bunch. And
Yeah.
again, and if I actually thought about it before, I probably have a list of them, but I will tell you one. My daughters, they always roll their eyes because as they were growing up, there was 2. So maybe it's not for me so much, but it's it might be on my tombstone someday. As I was growing up, and I think it's relevant for all of us business owners, entrepreneurs, kids growing up. I always, when they were going to school, I always left them with the mantra, be respectful, be respected. And I love alliteration, but I was always be respectful, be respected. And when you think about it, it's like helping before selling. It's like, the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated, but also, expect to be, respected. Nice. Now that they're in college, it's be safe, be smart. So it's not as maybe applicable to business owners and such, but I think the be respectful, be respected. I think that's a pretty good mantra these days.
Yeah. Keep your side of the street clean. Yeah.
Do what you can.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like every time I do an interview, it's the message I need to hear that day. So I really,
that's kind of cool. That's cool.
It's one of the things that excites me about getting on and talking to people from all over as well, and hearing their stories and their journeys and their advice to entrepreneurs and business owners. So, Mike, any last words that you want to share with our audience?
Well, listen, I would always encourage folks. I think a lot of people, Annika, think about, dream about, maybe know they ought to write a book so that they can help some segment of the world's population with some issue or challenge or a goal. And I would just say, I would say it's like a cliche because it is, but like, just do it. Like it will not help anyone sitting up in your head.
Yeah.
Whether you work with us, look at the Shook formula, there's there's so many opportunities out in the world right now to discover how to do this and do it fairly easily. I would just encourage everybody to get it out and start helping people with a book that's in them.
Nice. Thank you. That's beautiful. Everybody has a story inside, just waiting to be heard.
For sure.
Or read, if you will.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate you coming on. And listeners, I'll make sure that you know how to download the 100-page book and the other information, and get in touch with Mike if you have any further questions. Appreciate you coming back for another week of Your Brand Amplified, and I'll see you again next week.